All right. So I am Elizabeth. I am going to be talking about um, my experiences with integration and my family's history with it. So, for our learning target, I have that we will understand how race relations evolve over different generations and how my family personally experiences these broader societal changes. So first off, talking about my family's experience over time and how it can be very similar to Christine Green. My family is from near Farmville, Virginia. My dad grew up about 20 minutes away from there in Nelson County area. And my extended family and sister and lots of family still lives near kind of like Charlottesville, Culpeper area. So this is very relevant to my upbringing and how my family's worldview has kind of come into place as well. I, for my key questions, looked at, my family's educational experiences, their relationships with people, as well as how media might have influenced their interpretation on race. And then I also will be talking about recognizing bias and how to kind of bridge these gaps and move forward from this. So, starting off, this is my dad. He turned 70 this year. And he grew up during integration in Virginia during this time frame. He said that he remembers integration happening around fourth grade for him. And he said it was so insignificant for him that he doesn't even remember it really happening because it was just like another day and it didn't really matter and he didn't know any different. He mentioned that what he did find noticeably like substantial or like about race and it as a whole in his childhood is it was never like blacks were lesser or whites are better or whatever, but there was always more of like a stigma around mixed race people of any races, but any kids that were mixed, they were always more either picked on. It was kind of like they never had a place to belong to or kind of fit in with. And so he said that he had a hard time of, having to face these biases as he was growing up. And even like when Obama became president, he was shocked that we had a mixed president before a fully black president. And just like seeing these biases and seeing he now has 5 biracial mixed grandbabies and just coming to terms with what he didn't even realize he was learning throughout his life. Something really cool about my dad is my grandpa. He was a preacher in this time frame as well. And we have a church that was in our family since the I don't know. I think Jefferson used to go to the church that they went to, and they still to this day have the separate like quarters where the slaves would go, and it is obviously not in use anymore, but it is very interesting to see the history within it and to see how my grandpa was a factor in shutting that all down. And my grandpa pretty much lost his job for a while because he got into it with the deacons of the church, and they were all saying like, well, what's going to happen when the blacks try to come in and do this? And my grandpa was like, you let them, like they're people, they're here to worship, we're going to let them worship. And he ended up getting fired. And it's just really cool, unlike in the book we read where Kristen realized, her family actually was hurting all of these systems. It was really neat and like justifying for me to see my family, who is really deep-rooted Southern Baptist, but still seeing them do the things that I always thought they believed in and seeing that they really are these people who stand up and try to do what's right, even if they're not really sure what that looks like. So that was neat to learn about. For my mom, she is a different generation from my dad. She's about 11 years younger than him. And she grew up in upstate New York, and they didn't really have a lot of racial diversity, but had more of like religious diversity. And my mom said that she didn't really have a lot of like different colored friends growing up because of where she grew up in rural upstate New York on a farm. And that it was when she moved to North Carolina that she really like started to recognize it. Something that was very different between my mom and my dad's experiences is my dad had no recognition of any kind of media influences, whereas my mom noticed a lot more about media, and that was more of an influence on her, I guess, like worldview of what was happening in the times of when she was in school and integration and just diversity as a whole. Moving to mine, having grown up, my parents were always super intentional in making sure that we went to museums and that we did these trips and that I got these experiences. I have lived overseas in multiple different countries at this point. And it has been deeply instilled that it doesn't matter what you look like. Are you kind? Do you care about people? Are you doing the right thing? And that is what is important. And I'm really thankful for that. However, even despite these things and my parents being very intentional about it, there were still moments that I noticed that they would have personal biases come in that they didn't even realize they had. So my sister married a black man, and when he was introduced to us in 2008, I distinctly remember my mom telling me, hey, like, just so you know, LJ is going to be coming over, lock up any valuables. And I was in the 8th grade, and I remember thinking, what the heck? Like, this is not who my parents say they are. Why are they saying this? But, you know, you can say you believe all of these things, but when it hits your own family, it tests you out a little bit. And my parents, thankfully, are continuing to always grow and learn and do better. And my mom is actually superintendent now and works very hard to fight for diversity and equity in education. So I think room for growth is a big deal. Looking at myself, though, from where I grew up and the things that I've seen, I have found it to be incredibly important to be intentional in how I am and the way I live my life, because I have 3 biracial children myself and I am married to a white woman. We did not necessarily pick for our children to be biracial, but instead had someone willing to donate for us, and was just like, y'all should be able to have a family. So we are thankful for that, but we also want to be intentional, and this assignment and book have really opened our eyes to, you know, where we live in Murrayville, Georgia, does not have a lot of black people around here. And in the same time frame, my baby girl, who's 4 years old, is having a lot of insecurities about her tall hair and just trying to be really intentional. And we're actually looking at moving at this point and finding a place where my children can see themselves and not just see what their mommies look like. And just really like being intentional in where we're going from this. So overall, it's evolved over the generations. There's always going to be challenges. We're always going to have personal biases that we have to look into and address and self-reflect. And as long as we're trying to do better, that's all that we can do. And I'm learning a lot through this of just giving other people that space as well of I've had this time to deal and reflect to my own biases, and some people have just started that work and they need more time to do that, especially in terms of like my kids. So that has been a really cool thing to like kind of learn about going forward. To end out, I have this quote of injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And I think in today's climate or world specifically, this is just really powerful from Martin Luther King. And injustice to anyone, anywhere, whether black, white, Hispanic, gay, is an injustice to everybody. So that's it.